написав в історії Росії і данное в своем конечном итоге привести к победе социализма.
Did you know that Vladimir Lenin's decisions shaped the course of the 20th century and led to the creation of the world's first communist state? Lenin was a revolutionary leader, political theorist, and the founding father of the Soviet Union. In this story, we'll explore how Lenin rose from a passionate student of Marxism to a figure who overthrew an empire and changed global politics forever. Discover the secrets behind his rise to power, the impact of his radical ideas, and the legacy he left behind. Stay with us until the end. You might never see modern history the same way again. Born Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov on April 22, 1870, in Simbirsk, Russia, a city later renamed Ulyanovsk in his memory. He would eventually take on the alias Lenin in 1901 during his clandestine political work. Lenin grew up in a highly educated household as the third of 6 children. His parents, both cultured and deeply committed to education, instilled in him a lifelong love of learning. A brilliant student, Lenin excelled in school, particularly in classical subjects like Latin and Greek, graduating at the top of his class. Yet his early life was marked by hardship and loss. His father, a respected school inspector, was pressured into early retirement by a suspicious regime, wary of public education's influence. But the turning point came in 1887 when Lenin's older brother Alexander was arrested and executed for plotting to assassinate Tsar Alexander III. With their father already gone, the tragedy profoundly affected Lenin, thrusting him into a position of responsibility and shaping his revolutionary mindset. His siblings, too, would become involved in anti-government activities, setting the stage for Lenin's future path. Following his brother's execution in 1887, Vladimir Lenin began studying law at Kazan University. However, his time there was cut short when he was expelled during the first term for participating in a student protest. Forced to leave, he was sent to live on his grandfather's estate in Kokoshkino, where he stayed with his sister Anna, herself under watch due to political activity. It was in this rural exile that Lenin immersed himself in radical political literature. He was deeply influenced by What is to be Done by Nikolai Chernyshevsky, particularly its depiction of a revolutionary figure devoted entirely to political struggle. He also began studying the works of Karl Marx, especially Das Kapital, which profoundly shaped his political ideology. By 1889, Lenin had fully embraced Marxism. Despite earlier setbacks, he completed his law studies in 1892 and moved to Samara, where he worked mostly with poor clients. The injustices he saw in the legal system only strengthened his revolutionary convictions. Eventually, he shifted his focus entirely to politics, moving to St. Petersburg in the mid-1890s, where he joined forces with fellow Marxists. His growing influence attracted attention from authorities. In 1895, Lenin was arrested for his political activity and sentenced to 3 years of exile in Siberia. His fiancée, Nadezhda Krupskaya, joined him during this period. After his release, Lenin traveled to Munich, where he helped fund the Marxist newspaper Iskra, which aimed to reunite revolutionaries across Europe and Russia. By 1903, Lenin had emerged as a leading voice within the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party. At the party's Second Congress, he pushed for a tightly organized revolutionary corps to lead the movement. "Give us an organization of revolutionaries," he declared, "and we will overturn Russia." Lenin's bold ideas began to resonate more as Russia faced mounting unrest. The Russo-Japanese War of 1904 ended in humiliating defeat for Russia and sparked national outrage. Discontent reached a boiling point in January of 1905 when unarmed protesters marching to present a petition to Tsar Nicholas II were gunned down in what became known as Bloody Sunday. The massacre ignited the Russian Revolution of 1905. In response, the Tsar issued the October Manifesto, which promised political reforms and created an elected legislature called the Duma. But Lenin remained unsatisfied. He criticized both the monarchy and fellow Marxists like the Mensheviks, who advocated a slower, bourgeois-led path to revolution. Lenin believed true change could only come through a proletarian uprising led by the working class. The division between Lenin's faction, the Bolsheviks, and the Mensheviks grew deeper, eventually becoming a full split in 1912. During World War I, Lenin went into exile in Switzerland. There he wrote Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, in 1916, arguing that global war was an inevitable consequence of capitalist expansion. As World War I ravaged Russia, public frustration peaked. In 1917, the centuries-old Romanov dynasty collapsed, and a provisional government stepped in. Lenin swiftly returned to Russia and denounced this new leadership as just another tool of the bourgeoisie. Instead, he called for power to be placed in the hands of the Soviets, councils of workers, soldiers, and peasants. Later that year, Lenin led the Bolsheviks in the October Revolution, seizing control in what was essentially a coup. The result was a brutal civil war between the Bolsheviks, or Reds, and opponents, including Tsarist loyalists and foreign-backed forces. To maintain control, Lenin unleashed the Red Terror, a campaign of arrests and executions aimed at silencing dissent. In 1918, Lenin narrowly survived an assassination attempt, but the injuries left a lasting toll. Despite relentless opposition, he emerged victorious, but the country was left in ruins. War, famine, and economic collapse plagued the young Soviet state. By 1921, unrest had spread even among the peasantry and workers. To ease tension, Lenin introduced the new economic policy, a partial retreat from strict socialism that allowed some private trade and small-scale enterprise. Lenin's health began to fail in 1922 after he suffered a stroke, followed by another that same year. As his condition worsened, he grew increasingly concerned about the direction the Soviet Union was heading. In early 1923, he dictated a document known as his Testament, expressing serious doubts about the concentration of power within the Communist Party and warning particularly against the rising influence of Joseph Stalin. A final stroke in March of 1923 left Lenin unable to speak or continue his political work. On January 21, 1924, he died at his country residence near Moscow. His body was embalmed and placed in a mausoleum in Red Square, where it remains a symbol of his towering role in Russian and global history. Vladimir Lenin's legacy is one of enduring impact and deep controversy. He reshaped the course of global politics by laying the foundation for the Soviet Union and inspiring communist movements worldwide. Though praised as a visionary by some and condemned as a tyrant by others, his influence on the 20th century remains undeniable.